General Kalinvar stood on the command bridge of the Imperial warship Vengeance, her posture rigid and her gaze unyielding as she surveyed the tactical display. The holographic projection showed the small rebel outpost on Exos Vii's northern continent, its pitiful defenses no match for the might of the Xylos Empire. "Status report," she demanded, her voice cutting through the hum of electronics and quiet murmurs of the bridge crew. Commander Grok, her executive officer, stepped forward with military precision. "The rebels have rejected our final ultimatum, General. They claim the mining facility is civilian-operated and protected under interstellar law." A cold smile flickered across Kalen's face. "Interstellar law applies to recognized powers, not terrorists. Commence orbital bombardment, precision strikes only. I want the command center and defensive batteries eliminated, but leave the resource processing facilities intact." "As you command, General." Grok relayed the orders with grim satisfaction. Kalen watched dispassionately as the first volley of energy weapons lanced down from the Vengeance, striking with surgical precision. The rebels' main communications array exploded in a spectacular flash that was visible even from orbit. "Resistance?" she inquired, not taking her eyes from the display. "Minimal and ineffective," replied the weapons officer. "Their surface-to-orbit defenses are obsolete Terran technology." Kalen's lip curled slightly at the mention of human engineering. The Alliance and their primitive solutions were beneath contempt. Yet somehow, they continued to be a thorn in the Empire's side. "General," the communications officer interrupted her thoughts, "we've detected a small craft attempting to flee the southern quadrant. Scanner signature indicates it's a human-designed scout vessel." "Disable it," Kalen ordered. "The Alliance has no business in this sector, and I'm curious what information they might be carrying." The tractor beam operators worked efficiently, capturing the fleeing vessel with practiced ease. It struggled briefly against the energy field before its engines sputtered and died. "Bring it aboard," Kalen commanded. "Security detail to Hangar Bay 3. I want any survivors processed and interrogated." As the general turned to leave the bridge, Commander Grok followed close behind. "Do you believe this is significant, General? A lone human vessel seems hardly worth your personal attention." Kalen did not slow her stride as she replied. "The Alliance doesn't send reconnaissance ships without purpose, Grok. Either they're gathering intelligence on our operations, or they've been collaborating with the rebels. Either way, I intend to extract whatever information they possess." The human pilot was the only survivor. According to his identification, he was Sergeant Reese Calder, a combat engineer with the Alliance Expeditionary Forces. He sat in the detention cell with surprising composure, considering his circumstances. Most prisoners showed fear when brought aboard a Xylos warship. This one merely looked interested. "Your vessel was intercepted in a restricted zone during an Imperial security operation," the interrogation officer stated. "You will identify your mission parameters and all Alliance activities in this sector." The human, Reese, smiled slightly. "I was conducting environmental surveys of the moon's southern hemisphere. Scientific mission. Your security operation came as quite a surprise." The interrogator struck him across the face, the standard response to obvious lies. To the officer's surprise, the human didn't recoil or show anger. Instead, he touched his bleeding lip thoughtfully. "You know, on Earth, we usually offer refreshments before getting to the hitting part of negotiations," he remarked. 3 days later, Kalen received a report that piqued her interest. The human prisoner had somehow convinced the brig technicians to allow him to repair a malfunctioning air recycler. Not only had he fixed it using improvised tools, but he had improved its efficiency by nearly 15%. "How did this happen?" she demanded of the security chief. The prisoner claimed that the recycler's noise was giving him a headache. The officer explained nervously. "When the unit began overheating, he offered to examine it. Given that our technical staff was occupied with battle repairs and the unit is isolated from critical systems, the watch officer permitted it under supervision." Kalen's eyes narrowed. "And you allowed an enemy combatant access to our technology? Explain yourself." "The alternative was evacuating that section of the detention block, General," And the officer hesitated. The prisoner traded the repair for additional food rations. He had refused to eat the standard prisoner allocation. This was unusual. Prisoners did not negotiate terms aboard her vessel. More intriguing still was that the Xylo's crew had agreed to this arrangement. "Bring him to interrogation chamber 1, she ordered. "I will question him personally." Sergeant Reese-Calder was not what Kalen had expected. He was of average height for a human, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything around him with intelligent curiosity rather than fear. His physical condition suggested regular training, but he lacked the exaggerated musculature of Alliance soldiers bred for frontline combat. "Sergeant Calder," Kalen began, standing at her full height, nearly a head taller than a human. "You've created a disruption in my detention block. I fixed your air recycler," he corrected with remarkable casualness. "Pretty poorly designed system, if you don't mind my saying." The intake manifold was collecting particulates because the filter housing was installed backward. Easy mistake to make. The connection points are nearly identical. Kalen found herself momentarily at a loss for words. Prisoners did not speak to her this way. "You will address me as General or Commander," she said sharply. "Of course, General," he replied, though the slight smile never left his face. "Military courtesy. I understand completely." She circled him slowly, noting that he turned slightly to keep her in view, a soldier's instinct. "Your service record indicates you're a combat engineer, yet you claim to have been on a scientific survey mission." "I have multiple qualifications," he replied. "Engineering, field medicine, environmental systems. The Alliance cross-trains its personnel. More efficient that way. Fewer specialists means more flexible response teams." "An inefficient approach," Kalen stated dismissively. "Specialization ensures optimal performance." Reese shrugged. "Works for us. Your ship, for instance, impressive firepower, but I notice your life support systems could use an overhaul. The oxygen levels in this room are about 2% lower than human standard. Probably fine for Xylo's physiology, but it suggests your environmental controls aren't as precise as they could be." Kalen stopped her circling. "How could you possibly know that?" "I can feel it," he said simply. "Part of field medical training is recognizing atmospheric changes that might affect performance. Plus," he added with that irritating half-smile, "I checked the readout on the wall panel when your guards brought me in." Despite herself, Kalen felt a spark of interest. This human was observant and forthright in a way her own officers were not. No Xylos would dare point out inefficiencies to a superior, let alone to the ship's commanding officer. "You will be assigned to inspect and document the captured Alliance technology from your vessel," she decided abruptly. "Under supervision, of course. Any attempt at sabotage will result in immediate execution." Reese nodded. "Understood, General. Though I should mention that the propulsion system was already failing before your tractor beam grabbed us. That's why we couldn't outrun you. The coolant manifold has a hairline fracture." "I did not ask for your assessment," Kalen said coldly. "Just saving your tech some time," he replied. "They'd figure it out eventually, but probably after someone gets sprayed with toxic coolant. That stuff can burn through Xylo's skin even faster than human skin, I'd wager." Kalen found herself unable to maintain her usual intimidating stare. This human was peculiar. Over the next 2 weeks, Sergeant Calder proved both useful and deeply irritating. He cataloged the Alliance technology efficiently, providing insights that allowed Imperial intelligence to better understand recent human innovations. But he also continued to identify inefficiencies in Xylo's systems with an alarming regularity. More disturbing still was how the lower-ranking crew members had begun to interact with him. They maintained proper security protocols, but Kalen's reports indicated they were engaging the prisoner in conversation, asking his opinion on technical matters, even implementing some of his suggested modifications to non-critical systems. "This is unacceptable," Commander Grock declared during their daily briefing. "The human is undermining discipline and hierarchy." 3 engineering technicians bypassed standard approval procedures to implement his suggestion for optimizing the mess hall refrigeration units. "And what was the result?" Kalen asked. Grock's face tightened in obvious displeasure. A 22% reduction in power consumption, he admitted. But that is not the point, General. The point is that proper procedures were ignored. This human operates with complete disregard for protocol and order. Yet he achieves results, Kalen observed. Results without discipline lead to chaos, Grok insisted. He should be placed in isolation, or better yet, transferred to an Imperial intelligence facility for thorough processing. Kalen considered this. By all rights, she should have handed the prisoner over to intelligence services immediately. Yet she found herself reluctant to do so. Something about this human's approach, his ability to see possibilities where her own people saw only established procedures, was valuable. He remains under my jurisdiction for now, she decided. Increase security if you must, but I want his technical assessments to continue. That evening, Kalen found herself reviewing security footage of the prisoner. He was demonstrating to a young technician how to bypass a faulty circuit in a diagnostic terminal, using a makeshift tool fashioned from mess hall utensils. The technician was clearly fascinated, and Calder was explaining each step with patience and even humor. This was not how enemies behaved. It was not how prisoners behaved. It was certainly not how humans were supposed to behave toward their Xylos captors. She summoned him again the next day. Your continued cooperation has been noted, she told him, maintaining her cold demeanor despite her curiosity. However, I must understand your motivation. You are providing assistance to the same empire that considers your alliance an enemy. Reese considered her question thoughtfully before answering. I'm a practical person, General. Right now, I'm on this ship whether I like it or not. I can either sit in a cell being useless and bored, or I can do what I'm good at, fixing things. Besides, he added, most of what I've helped with isn't exactly giving away Alliance military secrets. Improving your refrigeration system doesn't exactly shift the balance of galactic power. Yet you must know that any advantage you provide could indirectly strengthen our position against your people, Kalen pointed out. Or it could show that humans have value beyond being enemies, he countered. Look, General, I've been watching how things work around here. Your people are rigid, hierarchical to a fault. No one questions anything. Everyone follows procedures exactly as written, even when those procedures don't make sense. Discipline and order are the foundation of the Empire, Kalen stated firmly. Sure, but there's a difference between discipline and inflexibility, Reese said. That technician yesterday, Varan, I think, he knew the diagnostic system was malfunctioning, had known for weeks. But because the official repair procedure required parts that weren't available and authorization from 3 levels up, nothing got fixed. That doesn't seem efficient to me. Kalen felt an unexpected discomfort at his words. What he described was indeed the Xylos way. Procedures followed precisely, regardless of circumstance, approval required for any deviation. It was how she had been raised, how she had risen through the ranks. Yet when he described it, it suddenly seemed limiting. You speak dangerously, human, she warned him. Such thoughts undermine the very foundation of our society. Or they might strengthen it, he suggested. Adaptability isn't weakness, General. It's survival. Their conversation was interrupted by a violent shudder that ran through the ship. The alert klaxons began blaring immediately. General Var to the bridge. Came the urgent call over the communication system. Multiple unidentified vessels have dropped out of hyperspace and opened fire. Shields at 78% and falling. Kalen moved instantly toward the door, her military training taking over. Return the prisoner to detention, she ordered the guards. Wait, Reese called after her. What's happening? Who's attacking? That is not your concern, she snapped, although in truth, she did not know either. The Vengeance was in a secure sector, far from any known threat. An ambush here suggested either a serious intelligence failure or a new, unknown enemy. As she strode toward the bridge, the ship rocked again, more violently this time. Emergency lighting flickered on as main power fluctuated. When Kalen reached the command center, she found chaos. The tactical display showed 5 vessels of unfamiliar configuration, moving with coordinated precision to surround the Vengeance. Report, she demanded, taking her position at the command station. Unknown aggressors, General, the tactical officer responded. Their energy signatures don't match any known alliance, Imperial, or independent vessels. They emerged from behind the moon, using some form of cloaking technology we couldn't detect. Deploy all defensive batteries. Launch interceptor squadrons, she ordered. Communications. Send an emergency transmission to Imperial Command. Communications are being jammed, came the response. We're cut off. Another blast rocked the ship, this one much more powerful than the previous impacts. Direct hit to our main reactor shielding, reported the engineering officer, his voice tight with stress. Containment systems compromised. We're looking at a possible cascade failure. Implement emergency containment protocols, Kalen commanded, her mind racing through options. A reactor breach would destroy the Vengeance and everyone aboard. The automated systems are not responding, the engineer replied, panic creeping into his voice. Manual override requires access to the reactor control room, but radiation levels are already exceeding safe parameters. Kalen made an instant decision. Evacuate all non-essential personnel to emergency shelters. Prepare for possible abandonment of the vessel. As her orders were relayed, Commander Grok approached, his expression grave. General, we cannot allow the Vengeance to fall into enemy hands. If the reactor cannot be stabilized, we must initiate self-destruct protocols. Kalen nodded grimly. Understood. But first, we attempt to save this vessel. She turned to the communications officer. Bring Sergeant Calder to the bridge immediately. Grok's expression shifted to outrage. The prisoner? General, with all due respect. He has extensive engineering knowledge, including radiation containment systems. Kalen cut him off. This is not the time for protocol, Commander. This is the time for survival. Reese arrived within minutes, escorted by 2 security officers. His expression turned serious as Kalen quickly explained the situation. You understand radiation containment systems, she stated rather than asked. Our main reactor is approaching critical failure. Can you assist? Without hesitation, he replied, I'll need to see the reactor schematics and current readings. As the data was displayed on a nearby console, Reese studied it intensely. The primary containment field generators are offline, but the secondary systems could be reconfigured to compensate temporarily. He looked up at Kalen. I need to get to the control room. The radiation levels, began the engineering officer. Will kill anyone who stays too long, Reese finished. I know, but if I can reroute power to the secondary containment systems and initiate a controlled shutdown sequence, we might prevent a catastrophic breach. Kalen considered for only a moment. I'll accompany you. General, Grok protested. This is outside all protocols. You cannot risk yourself based on the word of a prisoner. I'm still in command, Grok, she said sharply, and I do not intend to lose this ship without exhausting every option. She turned to Reese. Let's go. As they hurried through the corridors toward the engineering section, another impact rocked the ship, throwing them against a bulkhead. Kalen caught herself and looked back to see Reese already regaining his footing. Those ships, he said as they continued moving, they're not Alliance. The attack pattern is all wrong, and we don't have weapons with that energy signature. Then who are they? Kalen demanded. I don't know, he admitted, but their targeting is precise. Reactor shielding, weapons systems, engines. They know exactly where to hit you. The implications were disturbing. Either these attackers had detailed schematics of Imperial vessels, or there was a traitor providing information. They reached the radiation containment suit station outside the reactor control room. As they donned the protective gear, Reese explained his plan. The main problem is that the primary containment field has collapsed. The backup systems are trying to compensate, but weren't designed to handle the full load. If we can reroute power from non-essential systems and reconfigure the field parameters, we might stabilize it long enough for a controlled shutdown. How long will the radiation suits protect us? Kalen asked as they finished sealing their helmets. About 15 minutes at current radiation levels, he replied honestly. So we'd better work fast. They entered the control room to find it abandoned, the previous engineering team having evacuated when radiation levels became dangerous. Warning lights flashed everywhere, and a steady, ominous alarm pulsed through the room. Reese moved immediately to the main control console, his fingers flying over the unfamiliar interface with surprising confidence. The reactor temperature is still climbing, he noted, his voice tight. We need to divert coolant from the auxiliary systems. Can you access the distribution controls on that panel? Kaylin moved to the indicated station. Despite being the ship's commander, she had only basic knowledge of the engineering systems. Guide me, she said, setting aside her pride. Under Reese's direction, she rerouted coolant flow while he worked to reconfigure the containment field parameters. Minutes ticked by as they fought to stabilize the reactor, the ship continuing to shudder under enemy fire. Radiation levels are rising faster than expected, Kaylin warned, checking the environmental sensors. We have perhaps 7 minutes remaining before our exposure becomes critical. Almost there, Reese muttered, sweat visible on his forehead through the helmet visor. The field configuration is accepting the new parameters, but I need more power to initialize it. Kaylin made a swift decision, diverting power from weapons systems and non-essential life support. As she executed the commands, a sudden explosion somewhere nearby threw them both to the floor. Kaylin felt a sharp pain as her arm struck a console edge. When she looked up, she saw that part of the ceiling had collapsed, crushing the main engineering station. Reese was already scrambling back to his feet. Are you injured? He asked, helping her up. Functional, she replied tersely, though her arm throbbed painfully. He nodded and turned to assess the damage. The main console is destroyed. We'll have to use the emergency backup terminal. He pointed to a smaller station partially buried under debris. Help me clear this. Together, they shifted the fallen ceiling panels, revealing the auxiliary control panel. Reese immediately set to work, his movements growing more urgent. The containment field is failing, he warned. We have maybe 3 minutes before complete collapse. I need to manually initialize the new field configuration. That would require direct access to the reactor control modules, Kaylin realized with alarm. The radiation in that section would be lethal within minutes, even with the suits. I know, he said grimly, but there's no alternative. The automated systems are too damaged. He looked at her directly. Get back to the bridge, General. 1 person exposed is better than 2. Kaylin felt an unfamiliar emotion, something akin to concern, perhaps even fear, but not for herself. That is unacceptable. You are under my protection. A slight smile crossed his face. I appreciate the sentiment, but this isn't about protocol or rank. It's simple math. You're needed to command this ship. I'm a prisoner who happens to know how to fix your reactor. He turned back to the console. Besides, I've set up the sequence. I just need to execute it manually from the control module room. Before she could protest further, he had downloaded the necessary parameters to a portable device and was moving toward the interior door that led deeper into the reactor section. This is not a request for self-sacrifice, Kaylin stated firmly, following him. As your commanding officer. You're not my commanding officer, he pointed out. I'm Alliance, remember? And right now, I'm making a choice. His expression softened slightly. Look, Kaylin, General, if this works, get your ship to safety and tell the Alliance what happened here. These attackers aren't just your enemy. They're everyone's enemy. With that, he unsealed the interior door and stepped through into the high radiation zone. Kaylin watched through the observation window as he made his way to the control module, his movements already showing signs of radiation sickness despite the protection of his suit. She returned to the auxiliary console, establishing communication with the bridge. Status report, she demanded. 2 enemy vessels disabled, General, came Grok's voice. But our weapons systems are failing, and shields are at critical levels. Have you contained the reactor situation? In progress, she replied, watching as Reese connected his device to the control module. On her display, she could see the new containment field parameters being uploaded. Stand by. Through the window, she saw Reese stumble, catching himself against the module housing. The radiation was affecting him severely now. Yet his hands remained steady as he completed the final sequence. He looked up at her through the window and gave a weak thumbs up, a human gesture she had come to recognize. The alarm tones suddenly changed pitch, and the displays before her shifted from critical red to cautionary amber. Containment field restored at 78% capacity, announced the computer. Reactor temperature decreasing. Emergency shutdown sequence initiated. Relief washed over Kalen, followed immediately by concern as she saw Reese collapse to his knees beside the control module. Without hesitation, she opened the interior door and rushed to his side, helping him to his feet. "The mission is complete," she told him, supporting his weight as they moved back toward the outer chamber. "We must get you to decontamination immediately." His breathing was labored inside the helmet. "Did it work?" "Ship's safe." "Affirmative," she confirmed. "Now conserve your strength." By the time they reached the outer chamber and sealed the door behind them, Reese could barely stand. As they removed their contaminated suits in the decontamination chamber, Kalen could see that his skin was already showing radiation burns, and blood trickled from his nose. She activated her communicator. "Medical team to reactor control, immediate priority. Radiation exposure casualty." As they waited for medical assistance, she helped him sit against the wall. His eyes were unfocused, but he remained conscious. "You should return to the bridge," he told her weakly. "Your ship is still under attack." "My presence there can wait momentarily," she replied. Something compelled her to add, "You saved this vessel and everyone aboard. That will not be forgotten." He managed a pained smile. "Does this mean I get extra rations again?" Despite everything, Kalen felt her lips twitch in what might almost have been a smile. This human's resilience was remarkable. The medical team arrived promptly, transferring Reese to a stretcher. As they prepared to move him to the medical bay, Kalen straightened to her full height. "Treat him as you would treat me," she instructed the chief medical officer. "His survival is of utmost importance to the Empire." The officer looked startled but nodded. "Yes, General." Kalen watched them depart before making her way back to the bridge. The battle was not yet won, and she had a ship to command. When she arrived on the bridge, the situation had evolved. 2 of the enemy vessels had been disabled or destroyed, but the remaining 3 continued their coordinated assault. The Vengeance's weapons systems were operating at minimal capacity, and the shields were failing. "The reactor is stabilizing, but we do not have sufficient power for both defensive systems and propulsion," Commander Grock reported. "We must make a tactical choice, General." Kalen assessed the situation quickly. With the reactor in emergency shutdown mode, they could not expect additional power. The enemy vessels were maintaining their distance, suggesting they feared close-range engagement. "Divert all remaining power to engines," she ordered. "Plot an intercept course with the lead enemy vessel." Grock looked shocked. "General, our forward shields are at 12%. A direct confrontation would be unexpected," Kalen finished for him. "They believe we are crippled and defensive. They will not anticipate an aggressive maneuver." She turned to the weapons officer. "Prepare all remaining forward batteries. We will have one opportunity when we close range." As the Vengeance surged forward toward the nearest attacker, Kalen felt a curious sense of clarity. It was the kind of unconventional tactic that would never appear in Imperial strategic doctrine, precisely why it might succeed. The enemy vessel attempted to veer away, but the Vengeance's sudden acceleration had caught them unprepared. At point-blank range, the Imperial warship's remaining weapons fired in a concentrated barrage. The enemy's shields collapsed, and subsequent hits tore through their hull. "Target destroyed," announced the tactical officer with surprise evident in his voice. The remaining 2 enemy vessels immediately altered their approach, breaking off their attack pattern and retreating to a safer distance. "They're withdrawing from optimal firing range," observed the sensor officer. "It appears they're reassessing." Kalen seized the advantage. "Continue pursuit of the nearest vessel. Maintain offensive posture." The unexpected aggression continued to throw the attackers off balance. They had clearly expected to face a crippled ship fighting defensively, not one charging into close-quarters combat, despite its damage. After another 15 minutes of tense maneuvering and exchanged fire, the engagement ended. One more enemy vessel had been destroyed, and the last had fled, jumping to hyperspace before they could disable it. As the immediate crisis passed, Kalen ordered damage assessment reports and emergency repairs to begin. The Vengeance had survived, though heavily damaged. Most importantly, the reactor was stable, thanks to Sergeant Calder's intervention. "We should inform Imperial Command of this encounter immediately," Grok advised once the situation was under control. "These unknown aggressors represent a significant threat." "Agreed," Kalen nodded. "But first, I wish to check on the status of our engineering consultant." In the medical bay, she found Reese unconscious, connected to various treatment devices. The chief medical officer approached as she entered. "Report," she commanded. "He absorbed a significant radiation dose, General," the doctor explained. "We've administered anti-radiation compounds and cellular regeneration treatments, but his condition remains serious. The next 12 hours will be critical." Kalen studied the unconscious human. His face was pale, with visible radiation burns across his exposed skin. Yet he had willingly entered that lethal environment, knowing the likely outcome. "You will use all available resources to ensure his recovery," she instructed. "Report any change in his condition to me immediately, regardless of the hour." "Yes, General," the doctor replied, though she detected a note of confusion in his tone. Such concern for a human prisoner was unprecedented. When Kalen returned to her quarters hours later to prepare her report to Imperial Command, she found herself troubled by unfamiliar thoughts. The human had demonstrated qualities that contradicted everything she had been taught about their species: resourcefulness, courage, self-sacrifice. More disturbing still was how effective his unorthodox methods had proven. Her console chimed with an incoming message from Commander Grok, requesting a private audience. She granted permission, and moments later, her executive officer entered her quarters, his posture rigid with formal discipline. "General, I must speak freely regarding the events of today," he began once the door had sealed behind him. "Proceed," she permitted, though she suspected what was coming. "Your actions regarding the human prisoner were highly irregular and contrary to Imperial protocols," Grok stated. "Allowing him access to critical systems, following his technical advice without proper verification, and now dedicating premium medical resources to his treatment. These decisions must be addressed in your report to command." Kalen regarded her second-in-command coolly. "Are you suggesting I falsify my report, Commander?" Grok stiffened further. "I am suggesting that certain contextual elements might be emphasized to prevent misunderstanding. The prisoner might be described as having been pressed in his service under duress, rather than consulted as a valued advisor." "And why would I misrepresent the facts?" Kalen asked, her tone dangerous. "Because the alternative would raise questions about your judgment, General," Grok replied bluntly. "The human should have been handed over to Imperial intelligence immediately upon capture. Instead, you've allowed him unprecedented access and autonomy. Some might interpret this as sympathy for the enemy." The accusation hung in the air between them. Kalen knew he was not wrong. By strict Imperial standards, her handling of Sergeant Calder had been irregular at best, treasonous at worst. "The humans saved this vessel when our own protocols failed," she said at last. "What would you have done differently, Commander?" "Followed procedure and perished with honor as the reactor breached." "If necessary, yes," Grok answered without hesitation. "Better that than compromise our principles. The Empire is built on order and discipline, not improvisation and exceptions." Kalen felt a sudden weariness. This was the Xylo's way, rigid adherence to hierarchy and protocol, even when it led to failure or death. Until recently, she had never questioned it. Now, she found herself thinking of Reese's words about adaptability and survival. "Your concerns are noted, Commander," she said formally. "You are dismissed." After Grok departed, Kalen composed her report carefully. She detailed the attack by unknown forces, the critical reactor situation, and the emergency measures taken. She described Sergeant Calder's role accurately, but dispassionately, emphasizing the extraordinary circumstances that had necessitated unconventional decisions. As she finished, her communication console signaled an urgent message from the medical bay. Reese had regained consciousness. When Kaylin entered the medical bay, she found a human propped up on his bed, still connected to various treatment devices but alert. The radiation burns on his skin were already showing signs of healing thanks to the advanced Xylo's medical technology. "General," he greeted her, his voice hoarse but steady. "Herbie won the fight. Congratulations." "The victory was not without cost," she replied, moving to stand beside his bed. "But the Vengeance survived, as did most of her crew. Your intervention with the reactor was crucial." He nodded slightly. "Glad I could help." "Any idea who was shooting at us?" "Unknown," Kaylin admitted. "Their vessel configuration and weapons signatures match no known species in our database. One ship escaped, but we will track it. This attack was too well-coordinated to be random." "Inside information," Reese suggested. "They knew exactly where to hit you for maximum damage." The implication hung between them, the possibility of treachery within the Empire itself. "That matter is under investigation," she said carefully. Then, changing the subject, "The medical officer informs me your prognosis is positive. You should recover fully within 2 weeks." "Fast work," he commented, looking at his healing arms. "Your medical tech is impressive." An awkward silence fell between them. There were protocols for how a general should address subordinates, enemies, even allies. There were no protocols for how to address a prisoner who had saved your ship and likely your life through actions that defied all standard procedures. "I must ask," Kaylin said finally, "why did you do it?" "You endangered your life to save an enemy vessel. By the standards of your own military, such action could be considered treasonous." Reese considered the question seriously before answering. "I'm a combat engineer, General. My job is to solve problems and keep people alive. Doesn't matter much to me if they're wearing Alliance blue or Imperial black when they're about to die from radiation poisoning." He paused. "Besides, I was on this ship too. Self-preservation is a pretty strong motivator." It was a logical explanation, yet Kaylin suspected there was more to it. The human could have attempted to use the crisis to escape or to sabotage the vessel. Instead, he had worked alongside her with single-minded focus on saving the ship. "Your actions will be noted in my report to Imperial Command," she told him. "Such exceptional service cannot go unacknowledged." He smiled slightly. "Does that mean I get quarters with a view now?" Before Kaylin could respond, the medical bay doors slid open, and Commander Grok entered, accompanied by 4 security officers. "General," Grok began formally, "in accordance with Imperial Security Directive 557, I am here to take custody of the prisoner for immediate transfer to the Imperial Intelligence Facility on Velos Prime." Kaylin turned to face her executive officer, noting the security team's ready stance. "Explain yourself, Commander." "No such transfer has been authorized." "The directive does not require your authorization, General," Grok replied, his tone rigidly formal. "In cases where an enemy combatant has accessed critical systems or sensitive information, security protocol mandates immediate specialized interrogation. I have received direct confirmation from Sector Command." Kaylin felt cold anger rising within her. "You went outside the chain of command." "I followed proper security protocols," Grok countered. "The human represents a significant intelligence risk that must be contained. His actions during the crisis only confirm his value for interrogation. The techniques at the Velos facility will extract all useful knowledge from him." Reese remained remarkably calm, though Kaylin noticed his hands tighten slightly on the medical bed's edge. "Sounds unpleasant," he commented, "though I'm guessing extract is a euphemism for something much worse." "Silence, prisoner," Grok snapped. He turned back to Kaylin. "General, my orders are clear. The prisoner will be transferred immediately." Kaylin stood perfectly still, her mind racing through options and consequences. What Grok said was technically correct. Imperial protocols did mandate specialized interrogation for enemies who had accessed critical systems. Those interrogations at facilities like Velos Prime were notorious even among the Xylos. Few subjects survived with their minds intact. The thought of Reese subjected to such methods caused an unexpected surge of something within her. Anger? Protectiveness? She could not name it, but its intensity surprised her. "The prisoner remains under my jurisdiction," she stated, her voice cold and precise. "As commander of this vessel, I have authority to retain any personnel essential to ongoing operations." Essential? Grok's tone conveyed his disbelief. A human prisoner is hardly essential to an Imperial warship. This human's engineering expertise was essential to saving this vessel mere hours ago, Kalen countered. Given the extensive damage and ongoing repairs, his skills remain relevant to our mission capabilities. Grok's face hardened with barely controlled outrage. "General, I must formally protest this decision. It contradicts direct security protocols and creates unacceptable risk." "Your protest is noted, Commander," Kalen replied evenly. "Now, unless you wish to add insubordination to your record, you will dismiss your security team and return to your duties." The tension in the medical bay was palpable as Grok struggled with his response. The security officers shifted uncomfortably, caught between conflicting authorities. "This matter is not concluded," Grok said finally. "Sector Command will be informed of your irregular decisions." With a sharp gesture to the security team, he turned and left the medical bay. When they were alone again, Reese looked up at Kalen with an expression of genuine curiosity. "Not that I'm complaining, but why did you do that? He wasn't wrong about your protocols." Kalen found herself unable to provide a satisfactory answer. By all logic, Grok's actions were correct according to Imperial doctrine. The human should be transferred for interrogation. Yet she had opposed it with a conviction that surprised even herself. "You have proven your value to this vessel," she said at last. "Intelligence extraction at Velos Prime would likely render you non-functional, wasting a potential resource." "Practical as always," Reese observed with a slight smile. "Though I suspect Commander Grok doesn't share your utilitarian view of prisoner management." "Commander Grok adheres strictly to protocol," Kalen stated. "It is both his strength and his limitation." "And you?" Reese asked. "What's your strength, General?" The question caught her off guard. In her entire career, no one had ever asked her such a thing. Xylos did not discuss personal attributes or seek validation. They performed their duties and were judged accordingly. "Effectiveness," she answered after a moment's consideration. "I achieve objectives regardless of obstacles." "That tracks," Reese nodded. "Though I'd add adaptability to that list, even if you might not recognize it in yourself yet." Before Kalen could respond to this presumptuous assessment, her communication device signaled an urgent alert. "General Var to the bridge immediately," came the tactical officer's voice. "Long-range sensors have detected multiple vessels approaching at high speed. Configuration matches the attackers from the previous engagement." "They're back," Reese said quietly. "And this time they brought friends." Kalen turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "You will remain under treatment. Security will be posted outside this facility." "I could help," he offered. "Your engineering team is stretched thin with repairs." "You are in no condition to assist," she stated firmly. "Focus on your recovery." As Kalen strode toward the bridge, her mind was already shifting to tactical considerations. The Vengeance was in no state for another prolonged engagement. With the reactor in recovery mode and multiple systems damaged, their combat capabilities were severely compromised. When she reached the bridge, the situation was even worse than she had anticipated. The tactical display showed 7 vessels approaching, 5 with configurations matching their previous attackers, plus 2 larger ships that likely served as command vessels. "Status report," she demanded, taking her position. "Enemy vessels will enter weapons range in approximately 18 minutes, reported the tactical officer. "Our shields are at 43% capacity, weapons systems at 37%. The reactor is stable, but operating at reduced output following the emergency shutdown." "Communications?" Kalen asked. "Partially restored," came the reply. "We can transmit, but the range is limited due to damage to our main array. Kalen assessed their options swiftly. They could not fight, not against this force in their current condition. Retreat was the logical choice, but the hyperdrive required more power than the damaged reactor could currently provide. Begin emergency power conservation measures, she ordered. Shut down all non-essential systems and divert power to shields and engines. Communications, prepare a narrow-beam transmission to the nearest Imperial outpost. As her crew rushed to comply, Commander Grok approached her station. Despite their recent confrontation, his demeanor was professionally composed. "General, our tactical analysis suggests these vessels are specifically hunting us," he reported. "Their approach vector indicates they tracked our position with precision, suggesting they have either exceptional tracking capabilities or a tracking device aboard this vessel," Grok finished. "I have already ordered security sweeps of all sections, with particular focus on the prisoners' captured craft and equipment." Kalen nodded acknowledgement. Whatever their personal conflict, Grok was still an effective officer. "General," the communications officer interrupted urgently, "we're receiving an internal transmission from engineering. Chief Technol reports a possible solution to our power shortage, but requests your immediate presence." When Kalen arrived in the main engineering bay, she found a scene of intense activity. Engineers worked frantically at various stations while Chief Technol, the ship's senior engineer, stood examining a complex diagram on the main display. "Report," Kalen demanded. Technol turned, looking both excited and uncomfortable. "General, we believe we can restore full power to the hyperdrive, but the method is unorthodox." "Explain," she ordered. "The concept was suggested by the human prisoner," Technol admitted reluctantly. "He contacted us through the medical bay communication system with a proposal to reconfigure our power distribution matrix." Kalen's eyes narrowed. The prisoner should not have access to communications. "He improvised a connection using the medical diagnostic equipment," Technol explained, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "But, General, his suggestion is sound. By temporarily bypassing the safety interlocks and creating a direct conduit from the auxiliary power cells to the hyperdrive initiators, we could generate a sufficient energy spike for a single jump. Such a bypass would violate multiple safety protocols," Kalen observed. "Yes, General," Technol acknowledged. "It would also likely burn out the auxiliary power cells permanently. But it could work." Kalen studied the diagram carefully. The proposed solution was indeed unorthodox. It ignored standard engineering practices in favor of a crude but potentially effective workaround. It was exactly the kind of improvisation that Reese had demonstrated throughout his time aboard. "How did he access this level of technical data regarding our systems?" she asked sharply. Technol looked even more uncomfortable. "He didn't, General. He described the concept based on general principles and his observations during the reactor crisis. My team developed the specific implementation for our systems. This was troubling on multiple levels. Not only had the prisoner circumvented security to contact engineering, but he had apparently gained enough understanding of Xylo's technology to propose viable solutions without detailed schematics." Before Kalen could respond, her communication device signaled again. "General, enemy vessels now 12 minutes from weapons range," reported the tactical officer. "Their formation suggests they intend to surround us and prevent any escape vector." Decision time had arrived. The conventional approach would be to reject this unauthorized, untested solution and rely on established procedures, which would almost certainly fail given their current power limitations. The alternative was to embrace this human-inspired improvisation, with all its risks and protocol violations. "Implement the bypass," Kalen ordered. "Begin preparations for emergency hyperspace jump." As Technol and his team rushed to execute the modifications, Kalen's communication device chimed again. This time, it was a direct channel from the medical bay. "I'm guessing they told you about my little suggestion," came Reese's voice, strained but alert. "There's something else you should know. These attacks aren't random." "Explain," Kalen demanded, striding toward the exit as she spoke. "The targeting pattern in the first attack, They went straight for specific vulnerabilities in your systems. Too precise to be guesswork, Reese continued. I think someone's feeding them information about Imperial ship designs. We have already considered that possibility, Kalen replied as she entered the corridor. Security sweeps are underway. It's more than that, Reese insisted. The timing of their return, so soon after the first attack, they knew you'd be vulnerable during repairs. That kind of operational intelligence suggests an informant, Kalen finished, the implications crystallizing in her mind. Someone aboard the Vengeance was communicating with these attackers, providing real-time intelligence. She changed direction, heading not toward the bridge but toward the medical bay. If there was indeed a traitor aboard, she needed to consolidate her assets, including the unexpectedly valuable Sergeant Calder. When she arrived at the medical bay, she found Reese already disconnected from most of the treatment devices and sitting upright on the edge of his bed. Despite his weakened condition, his eyes were alert and focused. You should not be ambulatory, she stated. Probably not, he agreed. But since we might all be dead in about 10 minutes, I figured medical advice was optional. Without waiting for permission, he stood carefully, steadying himself against the bed. Your engineer, Technol, seems competent. If anyone can implement that bypass correctly, it's him. The modifications are underway, Kalen confirmed. But if your suspicions about an informant are correct, we face an internal threat as well as an external one. Reese nodded grimly. And the list of suspects has to include everyone with knowledge of Imperial ship systems and access to communications, which describes most of the senior crew, Kalen acknowledged. The implications were disturbing. Anyone, from engineering technicians to bridge officers, could potentially be the traitor. Even Grok, despite his rigid adherence to protocol, could not be excluded from suspicion. Her communication device signaled yet again. General, enemy vessels now 8 minutes from weapons range, came the tactical officer's voice. Engineering reports the power bypass is nearly complete, but they require 6 minutes for final configurations and testing. We may not have 6 minutes, Kalen replied. Inform engineering to accelerate their timeline. Tactical, prepare all remaining weapons systems. We need to buy time. As she ended the communication, a sudden realization struck her. The timing was too perfect. The attackers had returned precisely when the Vengeance was most vulnerable, yet just as they were about to implement a potential escape solution. They know, she said quietly. They know about the bypass attempt. Reese's expression sharpened, which means the traitor is either in engineering or has access to engineering communications, or has placed surveillance devices in key locations, Kalen added. The possibilities were numerous and all equally dangerous. We need to change the plan, Reese suggested. Do something they won't anticipate because it's not in any Imperial protocol. Kalen considered this. Standard doctrine would dictate concentrating their remaining firepower on defense while engineering completed the bypass. But if the enemy knew their plans, such predictability would be fatal. What would the Alliance do in this situation? She asked, the question feeling strange on her lips. Reese looked surprised, but answered promptly. We create a diversion. Something unexpected enough to make them pause and reconsider. Maybe fake a catastrophic system failure that looks like we're about to self-destruct. Most predators hesitate when their prey suddenly changes behavior. It was not a conventional military strategy, but there was a certain logic to it. If the Vengeance appeared to be on the verge of destruction, the attackers might pull back temporarily, fearing both the loss of potential salvage and damage from the explosion. How would we create such an appearance without actually endangering the vessel? Kalen asked. The reactor cooling systems, Reese suggested. If you vent plasma from the external cooling arrays, it would look like a containment breach in progress. Combine that with shutting down external lighting and visible power systems, and it would create a convincing illusion of imminent catastrophic failure. The plan violated numerous safety protocols, but it had a certain elegant simplicity. More importantly, it was exactly the kind of unorthodox tactic that would not appear in any Imperial strategic database that a traitor might have shared. I will implement your suggestion, Kalen decided. Return to your medical treatment. Security will remain posted. With respect, General, I should come with you, Reese countered. If there is a traitor, they might target you directly once they realize their plan is failing. Kalen was about to refuse when she reconsidered. The human had proven his value repeatedly, and in this moment of crisis and potential betrayal, his outsider status actually made him one of the few people she could be certain was not the informant. You will remain behind me at all times and follow all instructions immediately, she stated firmly. Any deviation will result in your return to detention. Yes, General, he agreed, with just the faintest hint of a smile. As they made their way toward the bridge, Kalen contacted Chief Technol directly on a secure channel, bypassing the main communication system that might be monitored. Engineer, modify your implementation timeline, she instructed. The bypass must be ready in 4 minutes, not 6. Additionally, prepare the external cooling arrays for emergency venting on my command. General, venting the cooling plasma would violate Safety Regulation 347B and could potentially. The alternative is destruction by enemy fire. Kalen cut him off. 4 minutes, Chief Engineer. Var out. As they approached the bridge, Reese kept pace despite his obvious discomfort. His radiation treatment had clearly been interrupted prematurely, and the effects were visible in his strained movements and pallor. Yet his eyes remained alert, scanning their surroundings with professional attention. Your Commander Grok, he said quietly as they walked. He's the most likely suspect for the informant. Explain your reasoning, Kalen demanded, though the same thought had occurred to her. He's rigidly devoted to protocol, yes? But he also went around you to contact Sector Command about transferring me, Reese pointed out. That suggests he's willing to break chain of command when it suits his purposes. Plus, he has access to all ship systems and communications. Commander Grok has served the Empire with distinction for decades, Kalen countered, though without much conviction. His adherence to protocol is well established. Maybe too well established, Reese suggested. Perfect cover for someone feeding information to the enemy. No one would suspect the officer who follows every rule. The logic was sound, but something about it troubled Kalen. If Grok were truly the traitor, why would he have pushed so hard to have Reese transferred to an intelligence facility? A valuable prisoner with technical knowledge would be a significant loss to potential enemies. When they reached the bridge, all eyes turned toward them, first to Kalen, then with surprise to Reese. Commander Grok stepped forward immediately, his expression darkening at the sight of the human. General, the prisoner should not be on the bridge, he protested. This is a direct violation of security protocols, especially given our current tactical situation. The prisoner has provided tactical insights that may prove valuable, Kalen replied coolly. I have authorized his presence. Status report. The tactical officer responded immediately. Enemy vessels now 4 minutes from optimal weapons range, General. Engineering reports the power bypass is progressing but requires additional time. Implement Operation Deception, Kalen ordered. Communications broadcast distress signals on all frequencies. Make it appear that we are experiencing catastrophic systems failure. Engineering, on my mark, vent plasma from all external cooling arrays. Tactical, power down all exterior lighting and non-essential energy signatures. Her orders were met with momentary confusion before the officers began to comply. This was not a standard Imperial tactic, and the departure from protocol was clearly unsettling to the crew. General, this strategy is not found in any tactical directive, Grok stated, his voice tight with disapproval. Simulating a vessel failure violates Imperial Military Code 234, which forbids deceptive tactics that might suggest Imperial weakness. Noted, Commander, Kalen replied without looking at him. Tactical, execute plasma, venting now. The effect was immediate and dramatic. On the external view screens, bright blue plasma began streaming from the Vengeance's cooling arrays, creating the appearance of a catastrophic containment breach. Combined with the darkening of the ship's external lights, it presented a convincing image of a vessel in the throes of destruction. Enemy vessels are reducing speed, reported the tactical officer with surprise. Their formation is breaking up. They appear to be increasing distance. As expected, Reese murmured behind Kalen. They're afraid of being caught in what looks like an imminent reactor explosion. Kalen felt a surge of satisfaction. The unorthodox tactic was working. Engineering, status of the power bypass. Final connections being established now. General, came Technol's voice. We can initiate the hyperspace jump in approximately 2 minutes. Communications, Kalen continued. Prepare a narrow beam transmission to Imperial Command. Include all data on these attackers and our current situation. She turned to the navigation officer. Plot jump coordinates to the nearest secure Imperial facility. As the crew worked feverishly to complete preparations, Kalen became aware of Commander Grok moving toward the weapons control station. Something in his manner triggered her suspicion. "Commander, return to your station," she ordered sharply. Instead of complying, Grok drew his sidearm with startling speed, aiming not at Kalen, but at the main engineering control console. "This deception ends now," he declared, his voice suddenly different, colder, and without its usual rigid formality. Before anyone could react, Reese launched himself forward with unexpected strength, tackling Grok just as he fired. The energy blast struck the ceiling instead of the critical console, sending sparks and debris raining down. Security officers responded immediately, weapons drawn, but hesitated in confusion. Grok was the security chief, yet he had just attempted to sabotage the ship. Kalen did not hesitate. "Detain Commander Grok," she ordered. "He is relieving himself of duty through actions of treason." As security officers moved to restrain the struggling commander, Reese rolled away, clutching his side where the exertion had reopened his radiation burns. But his eyes remained fixed on Grok with a mixture of pain and vindication. "The Alliance will never defeat the Empire," Grok snarled, his composure completely abandoned. "But the Collective will sweep away all your corrupt civilizations. They are the future, a perfect union of biological and technological evolution." "The Collective?" Kalen questioned, the term unfamiliar. "You've been blind, all of you," Grok continued, his face contorted with fervor, "fighting your petty wars while a superior power has been growing in the shadows. The Collective sees the flaws in both your societies, the rigidity of the Empire, the chaotic individualism of the Alliance. They will replace both with perfect order." "Sounds like a cult," Reese commented from where he had collapsed against the console, his voice strained but steady. "Or a new player we haven't encountered before." "General," interrupted the tactical officer urgently, "the enemy vessels have realized our deception. They are accelerating again, weapons charging. Impact in less than 3 minutes. Engineering, status of the bypass?" Kalen demanded. "Ready to initiate, General," came the response. "But we'll have only seconds to activate the hyperdrive once the power flow begins. The system won't sustain the energy surge for long." Kalen made her decision instantly. "Begin power bypass now. Navigation. Stand ready for immediate jump upon my command." As the final preparations were made, Kalen moved to where Reese was attempting to stand despite his obvious pain. "That was foolish," she told him, though without real reproach. "You reopened your injuries. Couldn't let him shoot your only escape route," Reese replied with a grimace. "Besides, tackling superior officers is a specialty of mine. Ask my Alliance commanders." Despite everything, the imminent danger, the revelation of betrayal, the chaos of the moment, Kalen felt something unexpected. Respect, certainly, but also something more complex. This human had repeatedly risked himself for her ship and crew, despite being their prisoner. He had demonstrated values that transcended the boundaries of their respective civilizations. "General," called the engineering officer, bypass activated. "Hyperdrive power levels reaching critical threshold. We must jump now or risk system burnout." "Enemy vessels entering weapons range," added the tactical officer. "Impacts imminent. Execute jump," Kalen ordered, her voice calm despite the crisis. The stars on the view screen elongated as the hyperdrive engaged, propelling the Vengeance into faster-than-light travel mere seconds before the enemy weapons would have struck. The ship shuddered violently as the improvised power bypass pushed critical systems beyond their design parameters, but held together. They had escaped. In the aftermath, as emergency repairs continued and the ship limped toward the nearest Imperial outpost, Kaelin found herself in a situation without precedent in her career. Grok's betrayal had stunned the crew, creating uncertainty and fear where once there had been only rigid discipline. The enemy, this collective that Grok had mentioned, represented an unknown threat that neither the Empire nor the Alliance had apparently recognized. And then there was Sergeant Rhys Calder, the human prisoner who had proven himself more valuable than many of her own officers. Kaelin found him in the medical bay once again, this time under more intensive treatment for both his radiation exposure and the injuries sustained during his confrontation with Grok. "The doctor informs me you will recover," she stated as she approached his bed. "Though your actions on the bridge extended your treatment requirements significantly." "Worth it," Rhys replied, his voice weaker than before, but his eyes still alert. "Though I have to admit, I didn't expect Grok to be quite so fanatical. This collective sounds like something both our governments should be worried about." "Indeed," Kaelin agreed. "I have included all information in my report to Imperial Command, including the possibility that there may be other infiltrators in both our civilizations." A moment of silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken implications. The political situation had suddenly become much more complex. If this new force, the collective, had indeed infiltrated both the Empire and the Alliance, then the long-standing conflict between their civilizations might be a dangerous distraction from a greater threat. "What happens now?" Rhys asked finally. "To me, I mean. I'm guessing your superiors will still want me transferred to that intelligence facility once we reach an Imperial outpost." Kaelin had been considering this question extensively. By all Imperial protocols, he should indeed be handed over to intelligence services. He had accessed critical systems, gained dangerous knowledge of Imperial technology, and demonstrated abilities that could be valuable to the Alliance if he were ever to return. Yet he had also saved her ship twice, exposed a dangerous traitor, and possibly revealed a threat to both their civilizations. "Your status is complicated," she admitted. "Standard protocols would indeed dictate your transfer to intelligence services." Rhys nodded, resignation in his expression. "I figured as much. Well, it was an interesting few weeks at least." However, Kaelin continued, "Standard protocols have proven inadequate in our recent encounters. Your unconventional thinking and actions were instrumental to our survival. This suggests that perhaps unconventional solutions are sometimes necessary." She straightened to her full height, making her decision. "Upon reaching the Imperial outpost, I will formally designate you as an Imperial asset under my direct authority, rather than as a prisoner of war. This will prevent your transfer to intelligence services and keep you aboard the Vengeance during our repairs and subsequent mission." Rhys looked genuinely surprised. "That's not what I expected. Won't that cause problems for you with your superiors?" "Undoubtedly," Kaelin acknowledged. "But recent events have demonstrated that strict adherence to hierarchy and protocol can be exploited by our enemies. Adaptability, as you once suggested, may be essential for survival." The medical bay door opened and several officers entered, including the ship's senior staff who had replaced Grok as acting security chief. They looked confused by the general's presence at the prisoner's bedside, but maintained their professional composure. "General," the acting security chief began, "we've completed our initial investigation of Commander Grok's communications. There is evidence he's been in contact with unknown entities for at least 6 standard months. Imperial Command is requesting your immediate report and recommendations regarding the prisoner." Kaelin turned to face her officers, her decision crystallizing in her mind. What she was about to do would shock them, violate centuries of Imperial tradition, and possibly damage her own career irreparably. Yet she could see no alternative path that served the greater good. In a move that stunned everyone present, including Rhys, General Kaelinvar, the Iron General of the Xylos Empire, knelt on one knee beside the human's medical bed. The officers gasped audibly. In Xylos culture, Kneeling was reserved only for the most sacred ceremonies or to acknowledge a life debt of the highest order. For a general to kneel before a prisoner, a human prisoner, was unprecedented and shocking. Sergeant Reese Calder of the Alliance. Kaelin spoke formally, her voice carrying clearly through the suddenly silent room. You have saved this vessel and its crew through actions of extraordinary courage and skill. You have exposed treachery that threatened not only the Empire, but potentially all civilized worlds. By the ancient traditions of Xylos, I acknowledge this debt and declare you Carrie Vex, honored ally and protected entity. She rose to her feet, facing her stunned officers. This human is no longer a prisoner, but stands under my personal protection with the status of technical advisor. Any action against him will be considered an action against me. This declaration will be included in my formal report to Imperial Command. The officers remained frozen in shock. Such a declaration violated multiple protocols and hierarchies, yet none dared challenge the general's authority directly. Dismissed, Kaelin ordered, and the officers filed out, already whispering among themselves. When they were alone again, Reese looked up at her with an expression of genuine amazement. What exactly did you just do? I invoked an ancient tradition rarely used in modern times, Kaelin explained. Carrie Vex is a status that transcends political boundaries. It declares you under the protection of not just myself, but the honor of my lineage. Even Imperial Command would hesitate to challenge such a declaration directly. All that because I fixed your reactor and tackled your traitorous second-in-command? Reese asked, still processing the implications. No, Kaelin replied seriously. Because you demonstrated that there are principles that transcend our differences. Courage, ingenuity, self-sacrifice. Because you showed me that adaptability is not weakness, but strength. And because I believe that facing this new threat, this collective, will require both our civilizations to reconsider their assumptions. Reese was silent for a long moment before responding. I don't know what to say except, thank you. Though I'm pretty sure this isn't how either of us expected things to turn out when your ship captured mine. Indeed not, Kaelin agreed, the faintest trace of what might have been a smile touching her lips. The future remains uncertain. Imperial Command may reject my declaration, or the Alliance may demand your return. The collective clearly possesses technology and influence beyond what we anticipated. Our path forward is unclear, but we have a path forward, Reese pointed out. Together, apparently, which is the strangest part of all this. As the Vengeance continued its journey toward the Imperial outpost, General Kaelin Var, the Iron General who had knelt like a servant before a human engineer, contemplated the unprecedented changes in her world. The rigid certainties of protocol and hierarchy had been shattered by betrayal from within and threat from without. Yet in their place, new possibilities had emerged. Uncomfortable, challenging, but perhaps necessary for survival. The human was right. Their path forward was together, though where it would lead remained to be seen. What was certain was that neither of them, nor indeed their civilizations, could return to what they had been before. The alien woman who was a general had knelt before him, and in that moment, everything had changed.